What if I told you that the image that you see on your screen was a thumbnail that I created for a video that I published in June of 2019? A video that's been deleted from YouTube. That's right. I was suggesting people stock up on hand sanitizer, masks, rubber gloves, if they had to go out. And the lower left, I was suggesting people not go out, stay home, and have movie nights. Back in June of 2019. Now, why was I making videos about that? Well, there was this very strange event going on in Africa. One that I said was going to overflow emergency rooms here in North America eventually. This is an image from that same month of that same year, June of 2019. I also said that it would be very likely that the military would have to get involved to enforce certain protocols. If you think I'm kidding, here's the playlist. It's still on YouTube. Just go to my channel and look for Ebola Pandemic under playlists. And from the 18th of May of 2019 through August of that year, I put up, over 56 videos talking about something that was coming. Now, in Africa, they were calling it Ebola, but something just didn't jive with that at the time. I could not make sense of it. Knowing now what we know, I think we can state very clearly and unequivocally that this was not just Ebola. Here's an article from actually 2018. Quote unquote, Ebola virus. Patients escape quarantine to pray with 50 people, then drop dead. Threat soars. Highly infectious strain of virulent airborne contagion now sweeping across the globe. And that was the case. And it started in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Now, some are probably wondering, what does that have to do with things going on today? Well, it has been released now from Congress that they have determined it's likely that the 2020 sniffles was something that came out of a lab in Wuhan. But nobody asked the question, how did it get to the lab in Wuhan? I think I may have an answer to that. I think the Chinese dug it up accidentally in Africa, in the Cobalt mines. This is an element that's necessary for all of the lithium-ion batteries, all of the electronics, cell phones, laptops, tablets, electric cars, all this kind of stuff. It is incredibly valuable. This is a Washington Post article from 30 September 2016 that talks about these illegal mines where they dig way down underground. No safety equipment to pull this stuff out. Now, this is an article from 4 March 2013, Reuters. A dark realm far beneath the Earth's surface is a surprisingly rich home for zombie microbes. It's very possible that there's a deep microbial biosphere that goes down more than 10 kilometers, maybe 20. Underground include bacteria which need water and nutrients to grow, but not necessarily oxygen. Now, when you keep going down here, they talk about this, where they have even found viruses. The scientists also found viruses deep underground. Unlike those at the surface, those in the energy-poor subsurface typically insert their genes into microbes without seeking to reproduce aggressively, apparently waiting for better conditions. This role of virus as parasite, as mutualist, and as a share of information through gene transfer may be a fundamental underpinning of life in the deep subsurface. Now, I want you to look at this picture very closely. This came out of the Democratic Republic of the Congo during this outbreak. This is supposed to protect people from passing Ebola on. Now, wait a minute. Facts first. The Ebola virus can only be transmitted by the sharing of fluids. That was established when that outbreak happened here back in 2014. They repeated this over and over again, that Ebola is like HIV in the sense that it's not airborne, that you have to come into direct bodily fluid contact with someone else who has it to get it. Now, how does 6-foot snow fencing play into this? Why would you do this? This looks a lot more like something you would do to prevent the transmission, perhaps, of the 2020 sniffles. And here are 2 peer-reviewed scientific articles confirming this. Detection of viral RNA in tissues following plasma clearance from an Ebola virus-infected patient. What they're saying here, basically in a nutshell, I'll give you the links, is that even after they drew blood from people and had a negative result for Ebola, they still found Ebola in their lungs after. That it was not detectable in the blood, but it was still in their lungs, meaning they could still infect people. Does this sound familiar, guys? Being completely free of something in your blood, but still being able to make people sick? Here's the second article. Source, Public Library of Science. Scientists have found potential evidence of Ebola virus replication in the lungs of a person recovering from infection. What do we know about the 2020 sniffles? It's a lung virus. I'll give you the link to this too. Very strangely, in January, early of that year, they started shutting down the internet in that region to keep information from getting out. They started shutting things down all over in the DRC, in the south, and the west. All of these areas are correlative to the outbreak. There are all sorts of other stories about the Chinese interests in Africa, but make no mistake, I tried to sound a warning about this. I may have had the name wrong of what it was, but something was coming. And like I said, I'll find the link to the playlist here and I will share it as well. And you can go through and you can see everything that we were talking about 2 years ago. And it looks like something that you could see last year or this year. All sorts of strange events. 2019. This is what we were talking about. I don't think it's any coincidence, and I think this is the source, the real source, the cobalt mines in the Congo. They dug down, got unlucky. One of their workers came down with something, and everything all started to fall apart. Because they found viruses, and this is the most important point, that act as zombies. They infect other things, like Ebola, and then lie dormant as a parasite. And I'll give you the link to that article as well from Reuters so you can read all this. All this stuff is very, very hard to find. I'm glad I saved the links to it. But there might be something else coming. And this might be what they're not saying. The role of virus as parasite, as a mutualist, as a sharer of information through gene transfer may be a fundamental underpinning of life in the deep subsurface. I don't think this was any accident at all, other than how it got to the surface. After that, who knows? But I'll leave it there. Ebola pandemic playlist, Florida Mucky. God bless. Like, share, subscribe. We'll see you tonight on Twitch.